From Anshe Sfar Beth El Emeth Congregation, it's time to take 10 minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein.
Welcome to our discussion of Purim, Esther and Daniel. If we think of the Esther and Daniel, there's so many comparisons between the two, and yet some contrast as well. Esther and Daniel both were important Jews in the court of important kings at the time of the exile of the Jews by the Babylonians in the year 586 BCE and beyond. Daniel spans the many different kings, Nebuchadnezzar and Daryavesh and so many others, where Belshazzar, whereas Esther is uniquely situated and related to Achashverosh. And yet they're Jews and they're important in the court. However, what a great contrast. Daniel is very much known as a Jew. Daniel is hated by various other advisors because he is Jewish. Daniel is one who is openly praying, eating kosher, and worshiping his God, refuses to bow down to the various idols. Daniel is in many ways like Mordechai, who is the opposite of Esther. Mordechai is very, very flagrant with his Judaism. It's very much on his sleeve. And he's Mordechai HaYehudi, Mordechai the Jew. But Esther, she for some reason doesn't want to tell about her Judaism. She's very secretive about it. And yet I'd like to show that actually, although Esther and Daniel seem so far apart, the rabbis have it that Esther and Daniel are really more similar than we think. Firstly, it's interesting to ponder the question, did Esther and Daniel ever meet? And the rabbis say, surely he must have been in there, because after all, he was an important advisor throughout this period, throughout all the various leaders, whether they're from Babylonia or Persia. He was always in charge. He was always a major advisor. And therefore, but when it says, Vatikval Esther lahatach, when Esther has to go and tell Mordechai, stop wailing and weeping in the streets, take off that sackcloth. Who's she going to tell? Who is allowed to know that Esther and Mordechai are very close? Who could be the one to relay the messages about how to save the Jews? Only someone very trusted. The Megillah refers to it as the Tach, Hatach. Who is that? And the rabbis in the Gemara Megillah say it must be Daniel. The question is, why is he referred to as Hatach? And there are two interpretations. One opinion is that he's called the Tach. Rav said, that's Daniel, Lamani Kmo Shemo Hatach. It's not hatach, but it's really the same as chatach. He was cut off. He's no longer important. Now he's just a lowly servant of Esther. He lost his big job. Later, maybe he'll get it back. And that's why he's called the Tach, the one who's been demoted from his position. And Shmuel says, yes, this is Daniel, but it's Shekol Divrei HaMalchus Nichtachim Al Piv. It's the opposite. He's the one who all laws are cut. All laws are written and inscribed based on Daniel. He's an important leader. So we have two interpretations as to the role of Daniel during the era of Esther. But what about this notion that Daniel did such a great job in being a Jew, even in the king's palace? What about Esther? What kind of Jew was she? So the rabbis say, number one, Gemara Megillah Daf Yud Gimel, on page 13, the number one, in terms of kosher, they improved their conditions. How do they improve it? So there are two versions. One is that they improved it by trying to give her the good stuff. What's the good stuff? They called it the chaziri. They gave her some sort of walls of chazer. They gave her pork. Rashi says baconus. They gave her in Old French the baconus. They gave her this fatty bacon. That's what they thought would be better for her, and they gave it to her. And Rashi says, what could she do? She had no choice. She was forced to eat it. But she was not punished for it because she had no choice. Tosfos says, no. Yes, they gave her pork. They gave her bacon, but chas v'shalom, God forbid, she did not eat it. She didn't eat the bacon. She was simply given this bacon. That was the diet, and she just made do with the salad, with the side dishes, whatever they had. So two interpretations as to as to whether she ate the bacon or didn't eat the bacon. One rabbi says, no, she was exactly like Daniel. That you know what she had? Rabbi Yochanan said she had zaronim. She had the man, the seeds. And that's why we have haman tashin coming from the word man, the seeds, the poppy seeds. She ate seeds. She ate vegetables. How do we know she ate vegetables? After all, that's what Daniel ate. And surely she'd be no less than Daniel. Daniel was able to get away with it. She did it. Daniel actually proved to the court that you could live more healthy on a more healthy diet, a more healthy life, and look better and stronger on vegetables than on all the meat they used to give them. And therefore Daniel was allowed to eat seeds, and Esther was given the better food, which Daniel had already proven was the better food. What about Shabbos? Well, the rabbis say that Sheva Hanarot, she had 7 maidservants, 1 for Sunday, 1 for Monday, and 1 for every day, including Shabbos. And therefore, she could count Shabbos with these maidservants. What about prayer? We know that Daniel prayed 3 times a day. He's one of the first that explicitly we see that he prayed 3 times a day. So then, did Esther pray? Surely. She gathered all the Jews. She doesn't say she prayed, and yet the implication is that she was fasting for 3 days, surely as a way of praying, indeed. Fasting and prayer, as you'll see from the beginning of the Rambam and the laws of prayer and the laws of Tainis, they're very much related. There's one other element, and that is that the rabbis say in the Medrash that Mordechai was always checking on her. He was checking on her in terms of the various bloods and the various her status, to make sure that she knew whether she needed to go to the mikveh or not go to the mikveh. She was continuing to keep family purity, even in this state of being married to Achashverosh. She had some other kind of relationship with Mordechai. She continued the idea of family purity. The rabbis are telling us is that in order for Esther and Daniel to survive in that environment, they had to maintain 4 elements. Number 1, the time consciousness. The Jew has a different sense of the calendar. It's Adar. Mishanichnas Adar Marbim B'Simcha. When Adar comes, the month of Purim comes, we have great joy. A Jew needs to be aware of the clock and the time. Otherwise, it's difficult to continue to be a Jew. Socially, the kashrut is a way of modifying our social behavior so that she would remain with her own and remain true to her culture and her cultural values. She only had kosher according to some rabbis, or she had to deal with that according to others. And when it comes to prayer, she indeed maintained prayer. When it comes to family purity, she maintained that as well. There needs to be a sense of purity in order for a Jew to maintain their sense of identity. So the rabbis have given us a prescription, not just for Daniel and not just for Esther, but a prescription for us here in the United States of America and throughout our exile and wherever we may be in the diaspora. And to know, in order to continue to be a Jew, we need to do no less than Daniel, no less than Esther, to maintain the time consciousness of the Jewish holidays, to maintain the social consciousness by maintaining our kosher and our Jewish style of living, and through the kosher laws. Purity, maintain the sense that somehow it'll be a little different. We're going to strive for something a little different, a little pure, a little holier. And in terms of our family life as well. And finally, it needs to be a regular regimen of prayer. And with that, certainly, according to Ramban, the notion of during times of distress, we need certainly to turn to God. With that regimen of prayer, maintain our focus toward Jerusalem and our goal of eventually restoring the temple, according to the rabbis, not only Daniel, but also Esther was looking forward to and orchestrating that we should eventually be able to continue to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. With this identity and connection to Israel as well, a Jew can remain faithful even in the diaspora. This book is not simply a prescription of how Esther survived, but it's a common story, a story of 2,000 years, about Jews, 2,500 years, how Jews did continue to survive in the diaspora through these 4 important ingredients, which are the essentials, maintaining our Jewish identity here in diaspora. Thank you for joining us here at the Anshe Sfar Beth El Emet congregation for our discussion of Purim, and join us each week for our discussion. Thank you, Jason Lefkowitz, for making today's presentation possible. We learn each week in Zecher Nishmas in memory of my father, Baruch Reb Chaim Shmuel, of blessed memory, Yehי Zichro Baruch.
This has been 10 Minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein.